If you watched the last video or if you read my blog about, 4 common symptoms of those who have went through childhood emotional neglect, then you are at the right place because I'm going to give you some tips about what are some small steps that you can begin taking to start healing from your emotional neglect as an adult. So number one is acknowledge your story and own your story. One of the things that happens, as we move through life and as we start owning our story and our symptoms is that we almost forget the story of the past. And although I'm not a believer that you need to sit on a therapist's sofa for 30 years and rehash the same details again and again, there is a real value and a power in really understanding the story of your past and your present, and then the choices that you can make today so you can take accountability towards your healing, right? My approach is never about like the shame or the blame of other people or yourself. It is important to own accountability, understand the story, so then you could kind of become a co-creator of really creating healing in your own life. And I do think that there's some stories that like really are important. When we meet clients at our practice in Long Island, New York, we always find it really important to understand the history of like the parents, the grandparents, if there's a story of adoption, if there's death or divorce. Like we want to understand from, let's say, mom's side, so who's mom, who's grandma, who's great grandma, where did they come from, did they immigrate, what were their finances, what was their, their social standing culturally, what have they gone through. So really understanding the strengths and the weaknesses, the traumas and the triumphs of the whole family, and then really sitting with the person sitting across of us to really understand their unique experience and struggles. So number one is acknowledge and own your story. Understand if there was someone with special needs in the family, or if there was, someone who was in a caretaker role, or if someone was battling illness, or someone, whatever it was, oppression. And then really owning your story and how that impacts you, and getting to understand why you are the way you are, but really just owning the story of who you are today. Number two is making space for a big range of emotions. One of the things that happens in homes of emotional neglect is that there is this spoken or unspoken conversation that, you're too much, you ask for too much, you can't feel feelings, stop crying, don't be emotional. It might be words that were said because your parents had their own difficulty of managing emotions and they couldn't tolerate anyone else's because they were so overwhelmed. Or it could be an unspoken conversation where you unconsciously picked up, like, just don't be a lot emotionally. Any emotional needs that you have, they're too much, or they trigger the adults or the people in your life. So being an adult, I think it's really important for you to actually almost create space for a whole range of emotions. It's not just about happy or sad. There could be disappointed, there could be frustrated, there can be frightened. There's a whole list. I give clients a whole list of emotional words so that we really expand their emotional vocabulary and then allow their mind and body to experience a whole range of emotions. So really allowing yourself and noticing different emotions as they come up, label them for the kind of emotional experience as they are, and really like kind of widening your bandwidth of the kind of emotional experiences you have. So your body gets to learn that like it's okay to have these emotions. You can have these feelings and you can survive. You can have these feelings and be a wholesome person and be respected. Number three is, create a tolerance for negative emotions. So besides for like big emotions or a range of emotions, number three is you have permission to get angry, or you have permission to feel sad. Sometimes when people are in a home where, there was a lot of fighting, when they get older later on, right? So if your parents fought a lot when you're older in a relationship, you might be afraid of getting into an argument with your partner or with your friend or at work because you're kind of conflict avoidant. For whatever reason, right? Your body processed like they're fighting as danger. And so you want to avoid that. So it's similar where like if you weren't allowed to feel negative emotions, or if it would have been if you were yelled at if you were angry, or if the people around you were angry, then you learn like that's not okay. So there is a healing in being able for yourself to be with a negative emotion in a balanced way. So negative emotion tolerance doesn't mean like get angry and shout and throw things. It means helping your mind and body. And sometimes you need to work on this with a therapist or with the right support. Really be able to feel negative emotions without shutting them down and express them in a healthy way. So there's a healthy way of saying, I'm really angry about something that just happened. Like it's really not right. And then taking empowered steps towards that instead of chronically numbing. Because people who go through emotional neglect often will just like numb and shut down. So there's something about like being able to with your negative emotion and finding a healthy way to be with it and to move through it. Okay. The next pointer is Um, Make a list of your likes and your dislikes. Sometimes people who've gone through emotional neglect don't really know what they like, what they don't like, foods they like, places they like going to, clothing that's comfortable. As you get to know yourself, I would encourage you to make a list of the things that you like and you don't like. This was actually inspired from Dr. Webb, who wrote the book Childhood Emotional Neglect. And it might sound simplistic, but it actually is so important for really knowing how to tend to your emotional needs and physical needs in a real way. Um, and the last pointer that I would give just to wrap this all up is like notice in relationships, in the relationships you have right now as an adult, if you go back to old patterns where you shut yourself down or you're caretaking or you silence yourself or you go into these rages, but then you're not seen as a serious person, or if you are able to speak up in a balanced and healthy way. Because the more you're able to own your story, learn to identify and own, the emotional experiences, value what you do and you don't like, being able to tolerate really big emotions and find relationships where you can show up with a lot more health for yourself and owning your story, then what you're going to see is that you're slowly going to start making shifts towards relationships that really don't neglect you, because you might unconsciously be in relationships where someone else is emotionally neglectful to you, or you might be self-neglecting. So as you shift from self-neglecting to self-care or self-nurture in real ways, then often you'll find a shift. If you're needing one-on-one counseling, I would invite you to find a therapist to help you take these steps. And for now, I wish you so much luck and healing as you take steps towards feeling more whole.